and welcome to another day of Vlogmas. So today we are doing my November wrap up. Let's just go through what I have read this month. I'm going to scoot over and get my stats up here. I didn't bring my stats with me. I have read 15 books this month, which is up there with one of my best reading months. I've had a really good mix of like ratings as well. So I had 3 5 stars, 2 4.5 stars, 6 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 2 3 stars, and 2 DNFs, which I feel is quite a good mix. I mean, you know, obviously we'd rather not have the DNFs, but fine. The genres that I read, I've got a whole mix. I will just put the graphic up here because I forgot to bring that information with me. So I've just got them on. We've just got a whole mix of genres. The ways that I read them, most have been physical. I've read 1 on audio and 2 ebooks. So with that, let's run through the books that I read this month, like what my thoughts were and what my ratings were. I am going to be checking from my spreadsheet on my phone. So the first book that I read this month was Black Girl from Pyongyang, which is by Monica Macias, pop it up here. So this is a non-fiction about Monica's life growing up in Pyongyang, capital of North Korea, under the patronship of Kim Il-sung, who was the North Korean ruler at the time. Her father was the ruler of Equatorial Guinea, and he had sent his children to North Korea in like a kind of communist exchange, I guess. The word communist is never used throughout the book, but basically her father in Equatorial Guinea gets help from Cuba, USSR, North Korea and China, 4 very well-known communist countries. So, you know, I feel like you've got to make the assumption that his was also a communist regime. And this is the story of Monica trying to find herself and I guess her own space and her belonging, and try to understand why the rest of the world sees her father and her kind of adopted father as something bad when, you know, she doesn't. So I did really like this. I found it really interesting. I enjoyed the narrative. I wanted a little bit more out of it, if I'm honest. So I felt like we could have had a bit more kind of like depth into what it was like growing up in Pyongyang. Because we didn't really have that level of depth at all. It was very much a case of, I went to school and it was very nice. And that's it. And I just wanted that little bit more. Like, she never mentions or acknowledges anything like the kind of concentration camps that exist in North Korea. And it feels a little bit jarring that she's talking about life in North Korea without mentioning anything that sort of happens there, or like why the West has this impression of North Korea. So I just wanted a little bit more depth to it. So I gave Black Girl from Pyongyang a 3.5 star. I then had my first DNF of the month, which was Escaping from Houdini by Kerry Maniscalco. So I'd read books 1 and 2 of this series, which is Stalking Jack the Ripper, back in 2020. Started reading book 3, and I just thought, you know what, like my reading tastes have moved on. I'm no longer in my YA era. If I'd read this back in 2020, I would have really enjoyed it, but as it is now in 2023, I'm not really reading YA, and it just wasn't for me. So I have DNF'd, and I have since sold that book. Then we had my audiobook of the month. I have not stacked these books in order. Which was my reread of A Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. I adore this book. I think it is so good. The story is so whimsical and magical, and just I loved it so much. So this one is the sequel to Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I wanted to reread both books 1 and 2 before I read book 3, which I own, haven't read yet. What I loved with this one is just the whimsy, the magicalness. The characters were fantastic. I just loved everything about it. It was absolutely fantastic. I really liked listening to it on audio as well. I think it just gives I think it's actually a really good audiobook. So I gave this one 5 stars. I then followed that up with another 5-star, which we love to see. So this was a final book in a series, and it's The Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan. This is the final book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I adored this book. It is such a good ending to the series. It made me laugh, it made me cry. I'm so connected to these characters. I love this world. I'm really excited now to continue being in the Percy Jackson world with Trials of Apollo. I'm also very excited to read Chalice of Gods but I want it in paperback because I have all of the rest in paperback, so I'm going to wait a bit on that one. But yeah, adored this book. Fantastic. 5 stars. Loved it. We then jump to The Turn of the Key. So this was on my self-destructing list along with Escaping from Houdini as it happens. And I read this. It was fine. I felt like the ending was a little bit flat. It felt like 3/4 of this book was building it up to be like a ghost story and to kind of be one thing, and then we got to the end and everything kind of just like twisted a little bit, but in a way that I just felt was a bit flat. I did like it. Like I said, it was fine. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. We then read one of the books that I read for work, which was The Girl from London. I'm not going to go through like my ratings or thoughts on this one because it is a book I was paid to read for work, but this one is a historical fiction about a woman who makes the trip from London to Australia and then on to New Zealand, with children being evacuated from World War II. So she's travelling with this group of Scottish children, Scottish evacuees, and it's all about, kind of the journey there on the boat. And then I'm not going to tell you what happens because I think it is shocking, and it was a really good book. I did really enjoy it. But as something happens on the way home, and again, it's that story and that kind of, that experience. This book made me cry a lot. I am very excited to read this with my read-along group in November. No, not in December. Then I read a book that everybody has been reading. I read Iron Flame. So I was expecting to give this 5 stars. I was expecting to love this book, like hands down, best book ever. It wasn't. I gave this one 3 stars. Was it a 3 or was it 3.5? I've given it a 3.5. I liked it. It was okay. But I found there were so many issues that I had with the writing style, there were plot holes. I didn't like the way the characters went. I felt like this book needed another round of edits, and another sort of 6 months before being put into production. And to be honest, I really don't think that the Fourth Wing fandom would have lost interest if they had to wait another 6 months. I don't think this should have been rushed out as quickly as it was, in my opinion, and I think it was rushed out quickly to the detriment of the book. So I gave Iron Flame 3.5 stars, I am afraid. I then had my second DNF of the month, which was Something Wicked by Gretchen Rue. I was really wanting to love this book. It's like a witchy romance. It is been blurbed as Sabrina the Teenage Witch meets Gilmore Girls. kind of was ticking all of the boxes that I wanted it to, but as I was reading it, I got about 70 pages in and I was just bored. It felt like it was going down more of like a murder mystery than a witchy romance. And I just was like, at this point, this is the middle of November. I wasn't really in the kind of witchy Halloweeny mood anymore, and I just wasn't feeling it. So unfortunately, I DNF'd that one. We then had this book here, The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. So this is book 5 in the First Law universe. So it's a trilogy. This is the second of the standalones. So this one follows a battle in the north. And for the first probably 200 pages, I was quite bored because we met another whole new set of characters. I wasn't getting to grips with who everybody is and like what they're all doing. And so I was a bit just confused and like, oh, what's going on? The last 200 pages, I was absolutely addicted. Like I could not stop reading and was in love. The middle 200 pages were like, you know, somewhere in between boredom and obsession. So I gave this one a 4-star. I did really like it just because of the way that how it ended and the characters that we had met. I was like, yes, obsessed. But because it was a standalone, because it was a new cast of characters, I just found it very difficult to get into to start off with. We then got into my mangas. That's the one. So I read Death Note Volume 1. So this one was actually quite good. I enjoyed this. It's the first manga that I've ever read. And I was like, yeah, this is fun. I'm enjoying it. I gave this one a 4-star. I wanted to know a little bit more about like Light's backstory and how he got to this point, but it's fun and I will probably continue if I can find the rest of the books. Then the other mangas that I read Flying Witch Volume 1. This one was cute. I gave it 3 stars. I felt like this kind of started halfway through a story. I don't know if there was something that happened like an arc before this, but I felt like I was missing half of the story. And another disappointment, I read One Piece and I did not enjoy this. I thought it was, the word that I was using to describe it was stupid. I just thought it was dumb. I thought it was not amusing. I thought it was like slapstick comedy. Not a fan. I gave it 3 stars, but honestly that's fairly generous. I didn't really enjoy this one at all. Sorry, I know so many people are like One Piece obsessed. I then read Joe Nothing's Guide to Life. This is another book that I read for work. This book blew me away. And again, I'm not going to go into like too many thoughts and ratings, but this follows Joe. Joe is neurodivergent coded. He's not given like a diagnosis in the book. He works in this superstore called the Compass Store, and he knows what he likes his routines. His mum has been writing like in a notebook at home sort of tips on how to do kind of basic things. So if he gets confused, he knows he can always get to this book and that would tell him how to make a cup of tea or something. And then I'm not going to tell you, Joe then finds a notebook that his mum has written, which is like life advice. And it's then following Joe, making friendships, discovering how to kind of connect with people and how to kind of find his way through life. And it's honestly so beautiful. I do highly recommend this. We read this as part of a read along and I loved it. The read along group were absolutely obsessed. It was fantastic. Really, really good book. We then come to Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This has been one of my favourite books of the year. This is a smutty romance. It's incredible. I really don't need to say very much about it because I was just obsessed. We follow Ross and Aurora. They have a one-night stand at college. They then both think it is just a one-night stand. They think the other isn't interested. They end up being camp counsellors together at a camp where there is no fraternising. Obviously, they end up kind of going from like awkwardness to friends. We get into lovers. There is fantastic conversations around consent, around communication, and also just around like self-esteem and anxiety and things like that, which I really, really love, because we see Russ struggle with his own self-esteem and the way that his father, who has a gambling addiction, had treated him throughout his life, and Aurora struggling with her self-esteem with the fact that her father had like abandoned her and had no interest in her life. So both of them kind of react in different ways, and it's fantastic. It is smutty, so if you don't like a smutty book, maybe not for you, but if you do like something that is just a fantastically well plotted book, especially around the mental health issues, this is incredible. I then got into, I gave this one 5 stars, by the way. I then got into my finishing off my Skyward series. So Skyward Flight is a bind up of 3 novellas. I read novellas 1 and 2, which were fantastic. The first one follows FM as she discovers the slugs, the Taeniks, and the abilities that they have. Second novella follows Alanik, who's the alien that crashed on the planet that when Spencer left at the beginning of Starsight. And it's her trying to kind of get the humans to meet with her people and create those connections and that alliance. I then put this book down and read Cytonic. Cytonic follows Spencer, where she is in the nowhere and learning how to deal with her cytonic abilities. I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 stars. I really liked seeing the characters that we met in the nowhere. I loved seeing Spencer develop as a character, because in books 1 and 2, Spencer would be like, go in, all guns blazing, shoot first, ask questions later. And I just felt she was very immature and just not the most likeable or the most connected of characters, whereas she really, really grew in Cytonic, and I really enjoyed this one. I then went back, read novella 3 in Skyward Flight. This one follows Jorgen, and again, it's him making those alliances with the Kitson as well, making alliances with 2 other worlds, and kind of the build up to the big battle that is going to happen. I really enjoyed this bind up. The middle novella was the one that I kind of liked the least. I guess the middle novella would probably be maybe like a 3.5. The other 2 would probably be kind of 4, maybe a bit higher than a 4. But I gave the whole bind up a 4 star. And then just this morning, I finished reading Defiant. I've given this one 4 stars, but honestly, I feel like that's a little bit under. I think it should be higher than that. It's probably nearer like a 4.5. So in Defiant, Spencer has come back to Skyward. Our group are all together again. And they are fighting that final battle. And I, again, loved seeing the character development. I loved seeing all of the characters back together. We have a few chapters from different characters' perspectives, which was fantastic. I loved seeing the characters that we'd met through the 3 novellas kind of like just pop in as well, which is brilliant. And I finished this one off this morning. I meant to read for 10 minutes while I was like having a cup of tea and Bracken was having a breakfast before I took her out on a walk. I read for an hour and finished the book in floods of tears. Yeah, this was incredible. I was absolutely obsessed. I have nothing else to say. It was amazing. Again, like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I think it should probably be near a 4.5. So that was my wrap up for November. Yeah. So this is my November wrap up. 15 books. 2 5 stars and a number 4.5 stars. Absolutely loved it. 3 5 stars actually, looking at it again. Really, really good month. I'm really excited to get into my December reading, and hopefully it will be just as good a month. to finish off the year. If you like this video, please leave me a like. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned today and which ones you liked or disliked. Subscribe if you would like to, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.